feeling so small. Watch the clock ticking off the wall. But tonight I'm letting it go. Spend my coin for sure. I'm gonna be myself, or I could be someone else. No one's stopping me now.
Hi, if you are new here, welcome to my peers and subscribers. I'm so happy to have you. Hello, all my little astronauts. For today's video, we're going to be talking about the concept of death, and we have a ton of topics here today. If you're watching this on replay, go to the description below. You can find timestamps in different chapters, the different parts of this video. This will be part one of the concept of death. We'll continue on. So if you do have a question that you would like to have answered, whether in this video or in another video, in my next couple of videos about death, you can put them in the comment section below. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and bell icon and like this video. And here atop here, you can find all my socials in case you guys did not know. Unfortunately, our very special guest today was supposed to be about synchronicities and angel numbers today. However, she could not make it due to her kid. And so I am switching the topic to the concept of death. So I'm sorry for the change last minute. So if you guys are interested in booking a reading with me, check the description below. You can find all the information there. And here are some quick disclaimers on your screen. All right, perfect. Let's begin. We have tons to get through today. Hi, Julie. What's up, love? All right, so let's talk about everything today. It should be very interesting. Remember, if you don't understand something, just tell me, and I'm more than happy to help you in any way possible. All right, so we have my nice, beautiful whiteboard here with tons of different colors. So for the first topic that we're going to be talking about today is the angel of death. Now, I recently spoke about this in my previous video. If you had not watched episode 1 and episode 2, please do before you watch today's video, because you will not understand today's topic because everything's all connected and this is divinely guided by my guys. So please go watch those 2 episodes first before you come to watch this video. All right, so let's talk about the angel of death. So the angel of death normally has a very negative connotation, especially when it comes to the religious scripture, and that it's all it is. It's just an angel with a specific job. It controls both life and death. Happened to be funny enough that when I talked about the angel of death, I did not know that the angel of death, when it comes to tarot, it's a Scorpio, which happened to be my sign, and so therefore I am the angel of death. And I'll talk about this later on in the video, why it's very interesting and how this all works. Right? So we have the angel of death here, and the angel of death is a person who comes to you right when you're about to die, or sometimes not. That's not the case. They normally like to transition the soul in a peaceful transition. Sometimes the souls don't get a peaceful transition. I have noticed a lot of times, believe it or not, the angel of death isn't an angel. It's more of a connotation. So normally the people who are psychic and spiritual, they could be very, very well the angel of death as well. Not that we have abilities that angel of death doesn't have, but we can help people transition easier, so to speak, because we have the ability to communicate with them in the physical realm. Sometimes people need to hear things and know that they are dead in another dimension because they can't tell the difference. And I'll go into that later in this video. So I want to touch a little topic on angel of death. So if you do have a question about the angel of death, let me know. I previously spoke about the angel of death, so I'm going to move on to the next topic. So understanding death. You know, when people die, we often sometimes believe that you need to have a wake. You need to do a funeral. You need to do all these things. But really, a body is just a shell on the outside. The soul is what matters on the inside, right? And so there's a lot of things that you need to touch on, because the reason why is, death is a very touchy subject. We talk about spirit, ghosts, and stuff like that, and why they still exist and people have paranormal activities. So I'm going to touch into that right now. So understanding death, right? So oftentimes, believe it or not, a lot of us have one time in one way or another have experienced items or objects that hold a spiritual connotation or spiritual spirit or ghost, so to speak. So if you go into a house and they have that the ghost or the spirit, you know they're present there, but you can't physically see it, but you feel it. You maybe feel like a sense of coldness or whatnot. Well, the reason for that is normally, believe it or not, is when a lot of ghosts and spirit want to be recognized that they exist. So oftentimes they will bother you, and people get scared because they don't know this. All you have to do is acknowledge and tell the spirit or the ghost or the demon that you acknowledge that they exist and they leave you alone. They don't bother you, they don't touch you, they don't do anything. They just want to be acknowledged that they exist. Just like a regular human being, they want to be known to you that they exist in human form. That's it. Once you acknowledge it, you lose your fear. They leave you alone and they don't bother you. I have many experiences where I'll be sitting down on like a on a chair, and someone will be poking me, right? And I'll be like, oh, I'm sleeping. I'm in a good sleep, right? And they're poking me. I'm like, dude, please. I'm like, I know you exist. I'm not afraid of you. I'm going back to sleep. Then I go back to sleep. They leave you alone. They just want to be acknowledged. The same thing with these objects. So if you touch an object and you're scared, just tell them that you acknowledge that they exist and that you're sorry for disturbing them, and they'll leave you alone. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Gispa. Hi, Doris. Hi, Julie. So it's very interesting. It's quite remarkable, believe it or not. So understanding that when you transition, there's a lot to talk about. It's a very broad spectrum. So I'm going to try to break it down in the best way I know possible. So let's talk about the first topic about death. It's the one about coming back home, crossover. Well, actually, one of my subscribers have recommended this in my submission and questions. So if you want to submit your questions, go to my website and you submit your questions there. So coming back home. So when you cross over normally, right? So let's say, let me just make a nice rib, right? Okay, you just die, right? You just die, right? Well, people often, believe it or not, have always believed that when you die, your body remains, your soul remains with your body. But that's not true. The separation between human form is a lot more different, a lot more complex than you initially think. So here we have is the skeleton, right? I'm not drawing little fancy, so don't judge me, right? But then we have here is the aura, right? So you can see it. Okay, so we have skeleton, aura, and then we're going to have the soul. So we have three different things, three different separations of the human body, right? You have the skeleton, aura, soul, right? So the way we transition is the skeleton goes into the physical, right? This is what dies. But the aura and the soul never dies. And that's where people go wrong with this. They think of this idea that when they die, they go to heaven or hell. There is no such thing. It's all in the brain because it helps us feel better about the understanding of death transitioning. There is no transition. You don't go to heaven. You don't go to hell. Heaven, so to speak, is just back home. You come back to where you really belong. Right? You belong exactly where you're supposed to be at this point in time. Right? So when you cross over, a lot of times I have noticed is that some people don't realize that they're crossing over. Some don't even realize that they're dead. And I'll talk about this right now. I had a client a long time ago when I started the video, and I didn't know I had this ability, right? Well, I was sitting down talking to her, and her son came through. And I'm like, I described his voice to her, and he's like, yeah, that's him. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like he just told me that he's been waiting decades or years for her to speak to me so that he can tell her that he loves her and that he misses her and that he's sorry that he left so early. And he waited because he wanted to tell her that. And when he told her that, I'm like, all right, it's time to go into the light. So I would take him into the light and he would go peacefully. A lot of sometimes people wait to tell them, or they wait for psychics because they know that you're going to go to the psychic, or they're trying to push you to a psychic or something. I'm going to give you information so that the only way that they can communicate with you because you're not paying attention to the actual sign that they're giving you. And so it was actually quite interesting. I've seen a lot of this happen more frequently where I realized that I'm actually have the ability of a gatekeeper, and I'll talk about that and what that like, and the description of what the building's like, and it's kind of very interesting. It's really interesting. But anyway, so that is how the soul transition. There are three different parts of the soul, the human body, right? So that's how we transition. So let me erase this piece so you guys can see more. Okay, so I'm gonna use this. Oops. Okay, so that is death. Obviously, we're gonna use that here so you guys can, look at that because it's very interesting. All right, so now understanding transition is that when you transition, not everybody gets the ability to transition, right? So when you die, sometimes these people say you see a white light. Yes, you see a white light if you're getting hit by a car, right? So, for example, if you were driving and you were going on the wrong side of the road and the car was coming towards you, or you were on the road and somebody was coming but they were drunk and they're on your side of the road, even though you're doing the right thing, they came in and they hit you. The last thing that you're going to see is the white light because it's that beaming light coming from the car. And so a lot of people wake up thinking it's just like one of those dreams that they see in a TV show or the movies. And oftentimes they'll walk around doing their everyday scenarios as if they were still alive. But the thing is about what in that reality is that they don't know they're dead. They're walking around as if they're still alive. And sometimes it could take years or decades before they even realize or come to the realization that they are actually dead. Sometimes people don't know. And I'll talk about this more with Alzheimer's and people with dementia, autism, people with disabilities have it a lot easier when it comes to death or transition, as they already have begun the process when they were born or when the symptoms started occurring. So there's that. All right. So what happened when you die differently? When you die differently is by this few things. You know you're dead when you get murdered, right? You know that you die when you're in a surgical operation room, but you see your body in. I'm seeing right now like a pivot image right now, like you on the operation room, but your body's not there, but you know you were there. But then you're just standing, walking around, but there's no one in the operation room. Yeah, like if you died during surgery potentially. There are some few other cases. However, you will never know you died if you died in your dream. That is another thing. People say you die peacefully in your dream. That's probably one of the worst ways to die because you will never know you're dead. Because you will keep living in this other reality inside your brain, not realizing that you're actually not dead. Oh, thank you, Julie. Does it shock the soul to inform them that they died? Not really. I haven't had a scenario where they know that they were shocked that they're dead. I have never come across anybody specifically who have died and doesn't know that. I've come across many times where people already knew that they were dead or that they started realizing it when they started realizing that people that they were talking around cannot communicate with them the way they used to. So I feel like in some sense they are going to come to that realization at one point in time. And I do get that a lot, is that, sometimes people have been around for the longest time possible. And I'm going to talk about like World War II and one of my cases with one of my clients. Actually, this happened with many of my clients, actually, with Nazi Germany and soldiers and Confederates and how they came through. It was a whole big thing. But anyway, the main point is that no, they sometimes don't get shocked unless they really do not know they're dead. They're going to come to the realization eventually, unless they're like walking around in like an empty alleyway with no one around. They're not going to ever know. They feel like they're like lost. It isn't like one of those type of videos where when you die, you just go right into the light. No, there's a transition process. You have to like undergo a certain transition. And sometimes that transition can take decades or even centuries or years before they even finish it. It really depends on how fast or soon you start. So what happened to the aura? That's the same as the chakra. The chakra is a little bit different when it comes to the aura. The aura is kind of you. It's the body. That's the thing that protects you. That is the protective field, that protective shield around the human body. So, for example, this is you, right? And here's your aura. Right, that's you. But your aura is this black stuff around it, right? This is the protective field. That anybody who intrudes on there is taking your energy. That's why they say protect your energy, protect your aura. Because that's the closest thing they can have access to without physically touching you, right? So what ends up happening is that your chakras is what balances out the aura. So let me get the right colors then. 1 second. I don't have yellow. Of course they don't have yellow. All right, so let's just do this. Don't have orange. Let's do orange. Give me 1 moment. We'll just do this real quick. Okay, we got green, got blue, got, something close. Okay, perfect. I hope you can see that. I hope it makes a little sense here. So here is your chakras, right? We have all the colors of your chakras, the human body chakras. When each one is balanced and each one is appropriately according to what you're supposed to be in terms of your human body and your divine, you have here the crown, the throat chakra, the heart chakra, the solar plexus, the sacral, and the root chakra, right? When all these things are balanced, you're more balanced. Your aura becomes balanced. This is the main chakra. But there are many chakras throughout your body. There's chakras in your palms, there's chakras in your your chest, your feet, your legs, your foot, right? If you really feel like stress, you will go to an acupuncture, and the way they will, use their fingers, they will do pressure points are actually your chakra. They're connected to your chakra. They're just an extension of it. But these are your main chakras. So each one has to be in alignment in order for your aura to be protected. It's the only way for you to be balanced. When you see someone angry or hateful or negative, their chakras or auras are very likely unbalanced, right? So what happens to the aura when you die is that sometimes it doesn't transition or doesn't take you along with the body, right? So oftentimes than not, your job here in this timeline is to make sure that all these auras are actually chakras are all balanced. So that when you transition easier, right? You want to have to make your process a lot smoother by keeping them balanced and in alignment rather than trying to, disturb that in some form or way, right? Sometimes when you're so unbalanced that this can actually speed up the process to your death. It can speed up your transition, right? So you need to, ask yourself, am I speeding up the process or am I elongating it? Sometimes, you can get this entire thing balanced. You could do the right and everything right, but you could still end up dead faster than you would if you had not done it. That's particularly because of your soul contracts, which I'll get into very soon. Actually happened to be right on the next one on the list. So let's talk about soul contracts. So soul contracts, what I have realized is that soul contracts, believe it or not, have a lot to do with our timing of death. So, you may have realized, and I'm going to use a very political one, and I'm not trying to be political here, but it's very recognizable. I'm sure all of us remember this. George Floyd. Now, I'm not trying to get hate for this or anything like that, but a lot of people, sometimes your life purpose is, sometimes you're not supposed to know your life purpose. Sometimes you don't even complete your life purpose until you die. And sometimes a lot of people have many soul contracts, a lot of soul purposes to fulfill. And sometimes that takes place after death. When somebody, a child loses his mother or his father, that's part of the soul contract, is to get them in a period of transition to change the child into maybe a more assured person or a more changed individual, one that's more connected closer to the higher self, right? So that is how the soul contract works. Sometimes like that, the angel of death is sometimes supposed to take people away early or soon, not because, people always say like, oh, good people always die, but bad people always live longer. Well, I say the reason for that is because the good people have completed their mission or their job faster, but also need to realize that good people sometimes are supposed to be so good that it's almost so good to be true. Because when someone is touched by someone who's been really good, they are more likely to grieve and more likely to change the outer perception so that they can become better. But oftentimes than not, they blame an outside entity than going from within. And that is what is wrong with society and why society is the way it is, because it blames outside forces, outside entities, instead of going from within and actually thinking about what it is that they need to discover about themselves. Because a part of the reason why a lot of humans love other humans when it comes to, death and appreciation, when you go to a funeral, people cry, right? Well, people cry not because they actually miss the individual. They cry because they miss the way they felt with that individual, or the feeling, or the benefit that they got from it. Now, a lot of you guys may disagree with me, but that is just human nature to be selfish. And so that is just how it works. But when it comes to all this in the soul contracts, that people are meant to die at the time that they're supposed to die to transition or transform something. And I hate to say, believe it or not, but the people who die, or you see all these death or killing, yes, they're not meant to die. Because it's immorally wrong because it doesn't suit our moral standards. But in a spiritual sense, they're supposed to, because they're supposed to begin the process of healing. Sometimes people in the soul degree to come down to have this transition, be a part of that transition in whatever way possible. And sometimes it's in the most gruesome way, or in the most inhumane way, so that they can complete the process. Yes, the soul does get scarred for it, but there is no such thing as evil or good when it comes to the spiritual realm, because all are the same. They are the same exact thing, right? Because I'll talk about this more in depth in the future about heaven and hell and how that will work and how everything's all connected and stuff like that. And this is a very complex topic to talk about, so I do hope this does make a lot of sense. And if you do have questions, just ask me, or if you're watching this on replay, put it in the comment section below. And if it's a very good question, I will include it in the next video about death, the part 2 of death. This is just an overview and everything. Let me see. I know somebody asked here. Upper chakras vibrate higher and deal with the higher realm. The lower chakras deal with lower. That's an important vibration, deal with the ground and security. Yeah, good job. Diva. Does a person leave the body before a moment of death? Spirits and angels, do they leave the body before a moment of death? Okay, so here's the thing. So it depends on the type of individual that you're talking about. If you're a human person and you're very lucid, you will leave your body after death, 8 minutes after death. But if you are somebody with Alzheimer's, and I was about to talk about this in another video, but I'll give you a little brief overview. If you're somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia or some sort of ability, you'll often find, believe it or not, is that the reason why they're not lucid is because there's more of one soul in the body at the same exact time. And so what I have found is a lot of my clients who have Alzheimer's or dementia, you'll often times see people who are lucid but also not lucid at the same exact time. And the reason for that is that this lucidness is actually muscle memory. So if anybody were to take over your body, it's just muscle memory. That is how they're able to connect the dots, but they don't know your full story, right? And so what I have found is that in soul construct, often than not, some people will have almost like a car, right? You buy a car, you lease it for a certain amount of months, but after you're done, you will return it to the dealership and someone else will have ownership of that brand new car. Same thing, your body works the same exact way. Sometimes people with Alzheimer's, they will have their body for a certain amount of or period of time, and then they will give that body to somebody else who will live out. That's why often not you see people with Alzheimer's act differently than they were before, because they're not the same soul, the same entity, right? It's just a vehicle being driven by a spirit or a soul, right? So, sometimes people don't realize that the transition process for the soul that was there previously has already begun the transition period. It has already left. But the person who just got in is starting to begin a transition period as well. I talked about this many times on the episode 1, episode 2. Please go back to those videos if you had not watched or you don't remember. I talked about the timeline between birth, present, and death, right? So when you're born, you are dead, period, right? Your present is defined by your death, because your present comes after death. Because, the best way I explain this is this. You take this, right? And you see me, I see you. But this thing right here is the present. I am birth and you are death. You see us simultaneously, because time is a time man-made contract. Therefore, time doesn't exist and everything happens at the same exact time. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense now, is that this present is that, somebody asked here, and I forgot who it was, I think it was Diva, I apologize. The moment of death begins when you're born. You were dead before you were born, right? That's how it works, and that's how it has always been. I'm so sorry, Diva. I hope I didn't trigger anybody. Others psychics agree with you with what you were saying about George Floyd, that he agreed to die like he did for higher purpose for humanity. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Julie. Glad to know other people agree. Yes, we are indeed the center of the universe, and I'll be talking about this and how Earth or the sun is not the center of the universe. My mother-in-law lived with Alzheimer's for 11 years before she died. I'm so sorry, Julie. When she got Alzheimer's, I felt she was gone, even though she could still interact. Yeah, often, believe it or not, the two different souls in the body, they agreed to leave early. Even when the physical body cannot die yet, the soul leaves and someone else comes in and takes over. So there's that. So let's talk about, what is that? The white light. White light. Let's talk about the white light. Because, you see all these mythical things on the screen talking about the white light and, stuff like that. And I spoke about this briefly early in the video, is that sometimes when you talk about the white light, when you see the white light, you're not really going to see the white light. So I'm going to talk about this little bit of a transition period. And, I do have the ability of a gatekeeper, so I am going to walk you through on what it's like or what it looks like, what's inside. Looks like it's quite cool, actually. Now, did I intend for this to happen? No. No, I did not intend for this to happen when I had the experience, but it was quite cool to see how people transition into another lifetime. All right, so we have here, kind of look like a tunnel kind of thing. So the tunnel will look like this. It would look like kind of like a T, right? So when I was here, when I went in my third eye, I had to walk a lot of people through the transition, right? And I had one of my clients who was actually a medium, so she was able to see this. You have here is non-existent. So I'll explain this right now. Hold on. I've been here physically with my third eye. It was like in two different places. Then you have door 1 and door 2. 1, 2. And then here's me. So me coming in with whatever spirit. So let's put like spirit. All right, so I'm a gatekeeper, right? I didn't realize I had this ability until months later, where I'm able to walk people to, timeline. So as you see here, we have the non-existent, we have 1 and 2, and then we have me and the spirit. So I'm going to talk about this in a minute. So we have here the non-existent part is really where I decide whether or not you get to go and go into door 1 or door 2, right? But when you go into the non-existent, once you go in there, it's almost like spiritual suicide, basically what it is, spiritual suicide. So it will completely erase your soul, everything, your contract, your ever existence from ever being in this earth or timeline, right? It will erase your entire existence, including your soul and your past life that you have lived and the future life that you were going to live. Erase all that. We have here is May coming in. So this is what it's like. It kind of looks like, a very futuristic spaceship. You walk in and it's kind of very futuristic in the middle of the sky. You're like in space, in a galaxy somewhere. You don't know where, but it's in a galaxy. And it's quite cool, quite interesting, believe it or not. And so I will walk down with somebody who's a spirit. And sometimes, some of these spirits are bad, but they all have good intentions. And I'll explain it in a moment. Now, I'm not very sympathetic to people with Nazi or Confederate, but I will have to explain to you the story so you can understand where I'm coming from and how I got to here and how I know about this place, right? So I will walk down with the spirit and I'll either take them to the non-existent where they can commit suicide or not. But normally the spirit will be here. So I don't know why I put that here, but I apologize. The spirit would be by the non-existent, standing over the ledge of, if I kick them, they'll fall down and they don't exist. Or I could take them and walk them to room 1 or room 2. In room 1, it kind of gives you more of a fog, like an orange hue. So you go into that room, and I don't know what happened because I've never physically been in there, but you go in there and I close the door and you can't come out. But I don't know what it is, but you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice to either go into the first one or you go into the second one. And the second one, it's more like a blue hue. So you go in there, I've seen it. I didn't go in it, but I've seen it based on the outside. And it's like a sky. It's like a sky blue. You've ever seen a beautiful sky with the nice clouds and stuff like that? It's like that. right? So you go in there and there's sometimes people waiting for you, sometimes not. It really depends. Not everybody waits for you because it's rude for you to expect people who are in your love life to wait for you. Sometimes it's your soulmate, the person you're supposed to be with, waiting for you. Sometimes it's your higher self. Not everybody's going to be there. Sometimes, grandma, grandpa, they're moving on. They're not going to be there waiting for you because they got to move on to the next life. They cannot wait, right? So I'm going to talk about the story of Nazi Germany and the Confederates and how I found this place in the first place. So basically what ended up happening was I had a client, and I'm not going to say her name for different purposes, but if you watched episode 2, you may have remembered me explaining about the angel of death and her experience with the white flower. This is the same client, but her mother was included as well. And so she's a medium, and so her house is kind of like a voice. So we had a lot of cases where people from different backgrounds, immigrants, we had people from Ellis Island, we had people from Nazi Germany, we had Confederates come through her house to me because I'm a psychic. I can feel them and I can understand them where she could see them. I think also hear them, but I'm not exactly sure. I don't know exactly what her abilities are completely. But I remember standing here, sitting, right? And they were behind me, and I felt the energy. The guy was wearing like a leather jacket, and he was very angry. He was like, I was very scared, but I was like, oh, great. I can't leave. Like, he's behind me. He's very sweet, by the way. And yeah, he was angry. What I found out is that he's angry because he's a Nazi. He's angry at the fact that he was forced into doing it. He didn't really want to do it. And what I have found is that you have to be a little bit more empathetic to a lot of these people because a lot of these people were forced into it. So what I have found out is basically this individual was standing behind me, right? And he had, I was going to explain this in another video, but I might as well explain it now. He was standing behind me, right? And he was angry. He was actually in the stole of her ex-husband because we were trying to figure out why her ex-husband had an empty stole, and I could feel the energy. I'm like, she doesn't seem like the right person. Maybe a spirit in there. There happen to be a lot of my clients have people or relatives like that, and so in this case, she did. And there was a Nazi in there who was trying to get my attention, and he was very cold and stuff like that. But I ended up finding out that the only thing that he did was he was really upset with that he was born in the 1940s, somewhere around there, maybe 1920s, who knows. But he was a Nazi, and he worked in a concentration camp, and he was very upset that he had to commit the mass crimes and murder that he did because it wasn't really something that he wanted to do, but he had no choice. And by no choice, I mean he was forced into it. It was either that or death, and that is why I'm saying there may be no such thing as free choice of will. And I'll talk more about that in another video and why that is. Confederates people have the same thing. In the U.S. alone, your sons and daughters will have to be fighting war, whether they like to or not, or it comes to jail time or potential death. So a lot of countries during that same time had the same policy, but in Germany, I think it was death. And so he had no choice. Or sometimes he told me, I'm like, listen, he feels like he's being taken, something was taken away from him, right? But it was killed. But I didn't know it was killed. And so I go in and I explain, I'm like, oh, he's actually really sweet. He's really sympathetic. He's really sorry for the things that he did. And he didn't want to do them. He didn't know what he was doing, but he kind of understood at the point what the goal was. And he kind of did it. But after a while, after death, he would wait here 80 years to come to me. I think 80-something, 84 years, I think it was. He waited to come see me. And I talked to him. I was able to get her out of the ex-husband's soul. And then I walked him into the transition period. Right? So I saw this in my third eye. I was walking him. He was here. And I walked him down. I'm like, listen, there's 2 different doors that you can go to. You can have 3 choices. You have one where you can commit suicide and your entire existence are wiped out and you don't exist ever. Or you can go into door 1 or door 2. He, of course, went into door 2 because I told him that in door 2, someone was standing there waiting for him. Not at the point I didn't know who. And so I walked him in, I saw it, and that's how I know what it looked like. And I peeked in, and there was this white, blonde, beautiful woman with blue eyes, white, glowy skin. She was skinny, almost like very Palladian-like. And she was there. And I started crying. And I felt how sorry and what was taken from him. And what was taken from him was his person that he loved the most, he wanted to be with. It was her. They took her away from him, and that's why he had to do what he did. And he felt really sorry, and it stained on him, his soul. And so I ended up putting him into number 2, locked the door so he didn't come out because it was very suicidal. He wanted to commit suicide. And so I put him in number 2, and he was gone. But then later, and not the million. I'm not kidding. There were millions of them coming through right after they found out that I would put him in door 2. All of them were coming through. They wanted me to transition them into that so they can move on, because right now when you commit crime, the part of being in hell is waiting until a transition period, like waiting, feeling that forever, like when is my time to come. They waited for years or even decades. The Confederates, they waited decades or even centuries. So the same thing here, that a lot of them waited, and they came to me and they're like, Chris, we want you to transition us. And I said, why should I have to transition you when you did this? If you want to have it, why don't you work for me? And why don't we have you come back here on Earth and you raise the vibration of Earth? And so they all agreed that that's what they're going to do. Now I can't explain exactly what the plan is, because otherwise it's not going to work. And the plan is to basically help raise the vibration of Earth. And you're going to end up feeling that. You're going to end up seeing that the same people who started Nazism, Confederacy, and stuff like that are all going to start to crumble. These people who started it will finish it, because they were the ones that were part of it. And for those who didn't really want to commit those crimes, you can expect them to do the right thing. So do not worry, because life depends on it. Otherwise, they're not transitioning. So I told them that. I had about funny enough, we had about 2.5 billion people come to me, and there's a lot of people, but there's a lot of people that can come in and change the Earth. Because I'm like, I'm one individual. How can we change the Earth? And I'm like, you know what? Use my thing to my advantage. So that's what we did. So this is what the alleyway looks like. And then we have here is the Gatekeeper. That is the Gatekeeper. And now we're going to talk about the Shadow Death. But let me just see what message you guys have put on in the live chat. I was asking about moment of death because she fell after her shower. My dad saw her lying on the floor and taking her last breath. I feel better knowing she's transitioned well before then. Thank you. You're very welcome, Diva. My condolences, by the way. I feel like her soul was gone before her body hit the floor. May her memory be blessing to her loved one. Indeed. Well, I would think we have a lot of soulmates. There are many widows and widowers who remarry and find joy again. Well, yes, there is soulmates, but doesn't mean the person you're marrying is your soulmate. And I'll go more about this in another video. A great rabbi today said the soul of the murdered children of the Holocaust are reincarnating now to finish the spiritual task. That's interesting, yeah. They're finishing the spiritual task, and the same thing with the Nazis and the Confederates, because they want to do the right thing. So they are coming back here because they were forced into, out of free will, to choose their own destiny because they had no choice. The Japanese Americans who fought in World War II had to fight Native Japanese soldiers. Yeah, that is true. All right, so let's talk about the shadow death and how that is interesting. There's another form of death, and I'll talk about this right now. All right, so you may be asking, well, Chris, what is shadow death? I don't understand what shadow death is. So let me just talk about this. Okay, so this is shadow death, right? The name. All right, so what shadow death is basically is when you are sitting in a chair, right? So I'm going to try to draw a chair. Something looks like that. All right, here's you. Right, this is grandma. Let's just say this is grandma, right? Well, let me just put a wig on this. There you go. It's grandma, right? This is grandma sitting in a chair, right? But then here are her 3 sons. Grandma at the time, because remember, I talked about this many times. Birth, present, death. BPD. Remember that. PBD. BPD, right? Birth, present, and death. When you're born, you're dead, right? you are understanding the life, light shadow, light years. You know what light years are? I'll explain it right now. So light years, this is very important for this concept to understand that. So we have Earth, right? And then we have the sun. The sun emits energy, right? It emits light. So the light is coming from the sun to Earth, right? But when Earth has an ozone layer, so it takes anything that is not black, it reflects that light, right? To reflect it right back into the space, into the vacuum. And when that vacuum, you are constantly reliving and manifesting. That is how that works. So in order to understand this concept, you have to go back to episode 1 and episode 2 to rewatch it. So the same concept here. So when this grandma saw all she saw, she didn't see her 3 sons, right? What she saw was 3 figures, shadows, standing where she was sitting right before her death. But these same people, because remember, birth, birth, and death, it happens at the same time. Time is simultaneously the same time, right? So these 3 people, the 3 grandsons, were watching, looking at the chair and saying, "Grandma used to sit there," and I see her shadow. But what they don't know is that these 2 are happening at the same exact time in 2 different dimensions, right? In 2 different realities. Grandma's getting one, and the grandsons are looking, but they're so similar that they cross one another. They cross one another. It's like this, like a DNA strand, right? This is the intersection, and here's another intersection. This is grandma's death, and these are the grandsons looking. At the same exact time, it looks linear. So therefore, grandma could see her 3 grandsons, but can't see them physically because she doesn't know what they are. She thinks they're ghosts of spirit. And they are 3 individuals, and not her grandson. And these 3 grandsons are looking at grandma, looking at her shadow on the chair because she died. But both of them all 4 people are dead already. They're dead. They're just looking at the shadow. Again, this all comes back to the idea of light years, having light reflected back onto you way beyond your death. So this is how basically shadow death works. It's the feeling and looking at shadows at the same exact time before their death. So for example, you ever go in a house, like in my house, you'll see kids playing with balls and stuff like that, and you'll see them on the wall. But the fact is, they're playing at the same exact time as me. It's just that I can't see them physically because I'm on a different time period. But the time period doesn't work the same exact way. I'm dead already, and so are the kids. So therefore, what's shadows? What is the energy, a work of spirit? I hope that makes a little bit more sense. This is the idea of understanding of death. I know this is a lot to cover for today's video, so if you do have questions, put them in the comment section below. Or if you have any video requests, I'll show you right now how to do that. And if not, you guys can let me know how we did today and what you guys think. Have you ever wondered how you can submit your own questions or reviews, whatever video recommendation, or you feel like I'm not responding back to your messages because particularly it may have been getting buried in YouTube comment section? Or do not worry, I have a solution for you. So go to my most recent video and you will find here, just say for example, this video, right? The evidence, and you go to the description and you hit right here, submit your question and topic or video request here. You click on that and it'll take you to my website where you can find tons of different things. You can even donate to India for the help with COVID-19. You can book a reading with me. This is my website. You will go to my YouTube channel and hit submit your video request here. It will take you to a Google form and you guys can fill out all your questions here. And you can type in your question. All right, so that is basically everything you guys need to know. It's funny how you're talking. I don't watch any TV shows. I don't watch. Well, I do watch TV shows, but I try not to watch anything that's too spiritual or metaphysical. But I want to have this intuitively generated from my guides and my intuition. So all this information comes from my intuition. So there's that. So it comes directly from my guides, and I ask things so if that's to come through and channel messages through me. So if you see like, oh, notice like a change in high pitch or voices, that's probably because they're in my body. But anyway than that, I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Let me know what you guys think of this video. Bye.